So thank you. Nice. Cool. I guess I could recap on your question real quick. So Tia asked about food preferences and different factors that affect them. So just understand separate preferences, socioeconomic status, individual preference, um, food availability, so location. Those are all things that are separate and being able to describe them. And then your second question, Tia, was about knowing individual foods that relate to macronutrients, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so just making sure that you understand foods are made up of multiple macronutrients. So if I were to give you an example of a food, being able to really quickly be able to tell me like what are the primary macronutrients in that. I'm not going to make it something super complicated, but you should kind of understand that foods are enjoyable because they have different components. Like a steak, if you have just a thing of protein, like a really lean steak, it's not going to taste very good. But it's the fattier ones that make it a more attractive option. Protein, fat versus something like a cookie is carbs from the sugar and the dough, but it's also fat from the butter and all the other, little things that are inside of the cookie, chocolate, things like that.
Good thing I ate before this. It's gonna make me hungry.
That's right.
So, Dr. Maychek, I don't remember in class you going over the calculation of the percentage of each of the total kcal intake.
Hmm.
Maybe I missed that, but I don't remember actually computing anything.
Yeah, there was, I think that we dedicated maybe like a third of the class, so maybe you missed that one. But basically, just being able, if I were to give you, um, let's say that something is 100 grams of, or usually it's going to be in the context of a full person's diet. So if I give you this person ate 300 grams of carbs, 100 grams of fat, and 100 grams of protein in that day, what you're going to have to do is take those gram amounts, convert them into calories based on what Tia was saying for the individual numbers, carbs 4, proteins 4, fats 9. You would get a whole lump sum of calories for that entire day. And then you would divide the individual macronutrient calories, total calories for each of those into the total. And that would give you a percentage of that person's diet. And you would potentially have to do that either that direction or the opposite direction. If I were to give you a total amount of calories for the day and then percentages, being able to figure out how many grams there are of each of the individual macronutrients. And I don't know if how helpful it would be to do a problem like that over this. So I think that if you want examples, Lori, just ask me over email and then I can send you a problem. I'll let you work with it for a little bit and then can kind of work with you to go over how we got to that answer. Um,
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. And in chapters 1 and 2, there's a very small example. I think
Okay.
like halfway through, it shows you how to calculate like the total amount of calories per, like if someone were to give you just like a food item,
Mhm.
it shows you how to do that. I would ask it more on a more meal or a more food throughout the day kind of perspective.
Okay, great. Thank you
Mhm.
so much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can put questions in the chat as well. That's totally fine. I prefer voice because I think that that makes more sense for viewers slash listeners on YouTube, but whatever floats your boat.
Well, I'm here 20 minutes early. I don't know what we've already talked about.
20 minutes early. Well,
Late, 20
everything.
minutes late. 20 minutes late, sorry.
No, you're fine. Uh, since this is being recorded, you can go back and you can listen to a lot of it was just kind of going straight down the line, which I guess is beneficial. And so thank you, Tia, for kind of just starting there. But yeah, really just a lot of the chapter 1 and 2 stuff to kind of start off with. I think we covered food preferences and how calculations for macronutrients and percentages of like a total daily intake. Um, and then like understanding foods and their individual macronutrients that would be contained within. So those are the three topics we've already covered. Go back into the recording and see if those answer some of the questions you might have had, George. And then if they
All right,
don't,
sweet.
feel free to follow up with me.
For the fat-soluble vitamins, is it only vitamin A, D, E, and K?
That's correct. All dogs eat kibble.
Wait, that was for fat. Oh, sorry, that was like faster than my brain could comprehend. That was for fat soluble vitamins.
That is correct. A, D, E, and K. All dogs eat kibble.
I love that. Okay. All dog. I'm writing that out.
That's right. You probably weren't there when we went over it.
Kibble.
Dang, I like
Damn.
that too.
Well, there you go. Look at all these people that weren't there.
I don't remember that.
For
Feel like
water-soluble, I'm pretty sure it's 8B vitamins and then vitamin C. Are we gonna have to know the 8B vitamins?
no, the way that I explained it in class was as long as you know what the fat soluble ones are, then everything else would be water soluble.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll go over the individual water soluble and fat soluble vitamins and their main functions for the most part towards the end of the semester. That's where more focus is going to be on the individual ones. But for right now, I just want you to kind of be familiar with which ones are fat soluble and which ones are water soluble.
Can you explain what you mean by like the APA citation format
Oh,
questions?
the APA citation format. Yeah. So if you go into the Rapid article, there's a few different components to it. So the authors specifically, so there was, it might actually be beneficial if I just pull this up real quick. So I'm going to pull up the slide set and I'm just going to share screen just long enough so that y'all can see the slide that I'm kind of talking about. There aren't many things that you need to know from that lecture specifically. One of them is the difference between epidemiology and a randomized control trial. And I'm pretty sure that I emphasized that that's something that you're going to need, but I'm going to say it right now as well. And then the other thing is how to do an APA citation. So the way that that question is going to show up is I'm going to give you a citation on the exam, and then I'm going to have you tell me what's wrong with it. So I'll tell you right now, it's worth 4 points. So how many things do you think are wrong with it?
Four things.
Four
Four.
things. Yeah. They're not going to be super niche things like punctuation with periods and whatnot. I'm going to try to make them more apparent than that. Now, like font and stuff is totally for grabs there. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have examples of different citations right here. This is an example of the actual article itself that the Rapid lecture was talking about. And then if you want to see right here, last name, first initial, year, title, only the first letter is capitalized unless there's a colon, then the U here after the colon is capitalized. The journal's in all caps and it's also italicized. The volume is italicized. You don't actually write volume and then the number. It's just the number that indicates the volume. The issue number and the page ranges are all numbers. There's no actual words. See, if you look here, there's no volume 33, issue 5. It's just 33, 5, 62 to 66. I would pay attention to um, the way that the authors are listed. So it's last name, first initial. There's no month when it comes to the date, capitalizations, and then where the italics are. That's where I'm trying to help you narrow it down just a little bit. I know that's a lot, but I'm not going to be super. You might already think that this is kind of anal in the first place, but I don't want to like get you on that supposed to be a period instead of a comma or something like that. That help? Yes, yeah.
I mean, our professors are already doing that to us when we turn our papers in.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be part of the problem, but this is one of those things where it's like it's helpful to know how to write citations, and I think a lot of people don't actually know how to do it. They just go through citation generators, which is, I guess, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to teach you is to know it and not to defer out to something else, right? Have the foundation, but don't rely on the tool.
For most reliable nutrition information sources, are we expected to remember like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics,
Nope,
the U.S. Journal of Clinical Nutrition?
nope.
Or is it more like
All number
EDU? Okay.
RD, RD, and then you know, you can remember the order of all of them. So RD and PhD in nutrition and medical doctor, but the main thing that I'm trying to get at is the RD is the main source of professional information that you should be trusting.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Can we go back over the like different examples of minerals and the function of water? Like, do you mean how minerals affect water or
No, I think just knowing that like zinc is a mineral, knowing that calcium is a mineral, electrolytes, sodium, potassium, those are your main minerals. And then water functions, there's a whole slide dedicated to that. That's going to be things like lubrication of joints, um, filtering the blood,
okay,
regulating temperature. I'd be pretty familiar with all of those.
okay, noted. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not going to ask you anything super specific about any vitamins or minerals. There might be a few questions here or there that might ask some specifics about a particular vitamin. So, for instance, you should know that we actually do make our own vitamin K and biotin. And I ask that in a way that refers to the whole newborns get a vitamin K shot when they're born. So, and most of that is just because of the whole vitamin K is responsible for blood clotting. So a baby's colon, which is what makes the vitamin K, isn't well developed enough. So the shot is supposed to kind of help that process along until a newborn has a better developed gut to be able to make those things.
And then you said it, but I lost track of it for the minerals. You said calcium, electrolytes, and then two more.
Oh, calcium electrolytes. What else did I say? Zinc. Um, since Damien already asked, let me just pull up the exam real quick and I'll see if there's anything specific that I wanted you to know about that. And then I can run through how many questions there are of particular things as well, since that might be helpful. It's a pretty even split throughout. It's let's see. It is about it's about 27 or so multiple choice. There's about 10 true false. There's two fill in the blank. I already mentioned that one that's about food preferences. That's kind of like a short answer, but other than that, we have two like direct short answers and that APA citation question. I don't need you to write that out. I'm basically like as long as you can kind of bullet point through the APA citation one, I don't need it all written out in a paragraph. Um, and then there's the matching, which I had kind of mentioned before. It's one matching question, but there's eight blanks, so you're gonna have to match eight different things. From a mineral perspective, what do I even have on here? Oh, just knowing what minerals are, like examples of them, right? So sodium, calcium, iron, stuff like that. It's pretty straightforward, at least for right now. Organic definition, stuff like that. Exam's worth 100 points. I usually also let y'all debate's not the right word, but advocate for yourselves after the exams. We'll go over the questions, and if you have any issues with the ways that things were worded, or you felt like there should have been more wiggle room for answers, I'm always open to those things. Um, every now and then, someone makes a really good case for the entire class, and I give them points back, or sometimes people make a really good case for their specific answer, and I give them points back. And that's just because I feel like I am trying to also help you all understand that advocating for yourself is really important because you miss all the shots you don't take. I know you've probably had professors who don't like it doesn't matter whether you advocate for yourself, but I don't think it hurts to at least have that kind of thing in mind.
That is awesome to know. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. I don't know. I feel like I always appreciated when my professors would do that for me, and so I'm just trying to feed that forward, you know.
Yeah, I wish more professors would do it.
Yeah, yeah. It's I can understand when you get to be like an old jaded professor that, you know, people argue for the sake of arguing, which, you know, I'll entertain for a little bit too, just because I think it's fun. But like if you have a really good point and I have to think about the way that you answered something, I think that that's fair.
Agreed.
Try to be fair, if anything. So hopefully one of these days I won't all of a sudden have like some shift in my brain and become one of those cold, heartless professors that y'all write horrible reviews about on Rate My Professor, which not saying my reviews are great either, but most of the people I think who write bad things about me also just like don't talk to me. So
Yeah, it's usually the slackers that leave bad reviews.
yeah, yeah.
Quick question. Do vitamins contain calories? Because I want to say yes based on the slides, but I'm second guessing myself.
They do not.
They don't?
No.
Why am I seeing like 1 kcal? What's the 1 kcal from?
Oh, where are you seeing that?
I don't know. Like it's on like introducing the nutrients, and then it's like, I don't know. Oh, maybe I just read that wrong. That might just be a reading error. Okay, never mind. So they don't. Okay.
They do
Well, now
not.
I won't forget it. So.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to get at with that prompt is that a lot of people think B vitamins give you energy. Like most people, if they do know what B vitamins are, they kind of relegate the function to, yeah, those things give you energy. And I want that to be separate from macronutrients, proteins, carbs, fats, alcohol, that actually we break those down to make energy. And the example or the analogy that I gave in class is that if we think of our bodies like a car, we use gasoline as fuel. That's like the food that we put into the system. Um, but the other things like making sure that your you know like your oil is not like overly dirty, and that's why we get like oil changes and filter changes and replace
Mhm.
timing belts and stuff like that. That's your vitamins and your minerals, kind of just making sure that you have all the things that actually help you extract energy from that gasoline are in place.
Gotcha.
So yeah, vitamins, minerals are like the other parts of the car, right? They help provide energy. They just aren't the energy themselves. We don't break down vitamin C to make calories.
Right, right. Like if you're like how we were talking in class yesterday, if you were like intermittent fasting, you're like when you're eating in a deficit, your body's breaking things down, but it's not trying to break down the like the vitamins, it's breaking down the macronutrients.
Yeah, yeah, that's a decent way of thinking it, right? Like well, the example was actually that we're not trying to break down proteins, because the
Right.
proteins have, you know, other functions, but I get what you're saying is that vitamins have other functions as well. It's just that we can't turn vitamins into things that could be used as energy anyway. We can't turn them into, there's no like system in our body to turn them into like ATP, for example.
Okay, that's yeah, that's solid. That makes sense.
Yeah, cool. Saba asked, can I elaborate on what organic means nutritionally in science versus commercially? Yeah, that one's a pretty distinct question. So, from a scientific perspective, organic just means that it contains carbon. Um, So carbohydrate contains carbon. If we look at the structures of fatty acids, which we very briefly did, it's chains of carbons. Those are all organic. Vitamins, even though we haven't seen the structure of those, are actually organic as well. But if we look at something like water, water doesn't actually contain carbon in it. The elements are hydrogen and oxygen, hence H2O, but it doesn't actually have any carbon in there. Something like a mineral, iron, in itself does not contain carbon. Iron is iron. Zinc is zinc. If you look at them on the periodic table, they are their own elements. Carbon is its own element, distinct from all of the other minerals that are generally just elements that in nature have things kind of bound to them. So organic in that sense is containing carbon. From an industry perspective, it's a definition based on criteria being met um, for selling a product. So for like fruits, vegetables, generally what it's talking about is that there are certain pesticides that are listed as organic versus non-organic or inorganic. And those are certifications that have to be met. Same thing with like milk or poultry or beef. It's about conditions of raising those animals rather than it is about them containing carbon, which naturally they would have to contain carbon as all living organisms do. I'm not going to ask you about the like the industry definition because even then I am not an expert on like carbon footprint and things like that when it comes to the impacts of organic and all the different definitions since they're so spread out. Sure, like an ag professor would probably know that.
Thank you, Professor,
Of
for
course.
answering the question. So, like, in short, like, if we were to ask, like, describe, so we can say scientifically organic means a substance, a substance that contain carbon,
Mm-hmm.
and then industrially it means it's a criteria used for selling or like treating a product a certain way. So, like, it is a certification that's acquired through processing the food in a certain.
Yeah. It's an FDA related or USDA related certification. But then again, I also think that for the sake of studying, don't overthink it because it's going to be a multiple choice question.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Don't think too hard about having to formulate like a sentence to describe it. It'll all be laid out for you. You just need to be able to very quickly identify which is which.
Got it. It's a true false question rather than describing it.
Yeah, it's either true, false, or multiple choice. I can't remember which
Okay.
it is off
Okay,
the top
got
of
it.
my head. Hmm.
Yeah, that's easy. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Lori asked, can I tell you what the matching section can? Oh, yes, let's talk about that. So that's where like the fat soluble, water soluble vitamins are going to come in. I'm gonna like calorie amounts for things as well. So 4, 4, 7, 9, just knowing which one relates to which functions of things like water, for instance, just a lot of like the general functions and some of like the calorie amounts for the macronutrients. If I were to lump them all together, I would say macronutrients, micronutrients. Hopefully that helps without being too vague. Mhm.
Do you think you could please go over the feed forward versus negative and positive feedback?
Sure. Yeah. That's a good one. So negative feedback is when the body responds by trying to reverse a particular stimulus. So a really easy example would be when our body gets hot, we sweat to cool our temperature down. If it was a positive feedback, what would happen is we would respond to heat by getting hotter, right? So if we had a positive feedback response, we would respond to getting hotter by shivering to make us even hotter, which sounds really counterintuitive, right? There are very few instances in physiology in humans that are easily describable as positive feedback. If you want examples, there's things like oxytocin released during childbirth, There's things like hormones being released in cascades from the hypothalamus and pituitary, but you don't need to know any of those unless you take like a physiology course of some kind. The feed forward response is different in that you haven't actually experienced the stimulus. So it's almost like a sensation where you're anticipating something. So, for example, if you were to smell bacon, your mouth would start watering. That watering is meant to uh, moisten and start to break down food that's entering your mouth. But obviously, if you're just smelling something, it doesn't mean that you've actually put food in your mouth. So it's anticipation. It's preparing the body to deal with a particular stress. Another example would be your heart rate increasing, even though you haven't even started your exercise, right? You're anticipating it. Your body is preparing for the stress by already getting blood flowing more quickly, more efficiently.
So could you say that it's just your anticipatory response?
Yeah, that's a perfect way of saying it. That is much shorter than what I just said.
But it was good though. I liked your explanation. It helps.
Yeah. I feel like just saying anticipation doesn't necessarily paint the picture, but yeah, if you were to distill it down, anticipation. Of course.
For fortification versus enrichment, are we talking about like, like fortified like cereal or fortified breads, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, except you're going to want to know that it's mostly enriched breads and enriched cereals.
Oh, that's okay.
Um,
See, obviously I don't know the difference.
no, I mean it's one of those ones where it's hard for you to have an example to kind of tie it to. It's unfortunately more of a memorization thing.
Mhm.
Unless you've heard of examples of these in the past. If you look at any of your grain products, more than likely, if you didn't intentionally choose something whole wheat, it'll say enriched something flour or enriched grain somewhere on there. And basically, the idea is, especially with grains, is that they're these, kind of tough, really like bitter types of foods when we have them in their like very just harvested form off of a plant. And then what we do is we pull off things like the husk and the inner portion, which allows the plant to germinate, but it's bitter. And what we're left with is the big old starchy portion that we usually like. So white rice and refined flours and grains and like white bread, etc., would be made from that. But the enrichment process essentially describes adding nutrients back in. And usually it's kind of like taking a multivitamin, just shoving it back into the food, which is why, we have cereals and grains and things like that, which would normally just be devoid of any kind of nutrients besides a carbohydrate. But because we've added nutrients back in, we've enriched them with nutrients to make sure that people that are consuming those products, which people like to, actually have some vitamins in them, some minerals in them. On the other hand, fortification is adding something to a food that didn't exist there in the first place. So enrichment is taking something away and adding it back in. Fortification is fortifying it, right? So making it stronger than with something that it was not already in that food in particular. So fortified orange juice has calcium and vitamin D in it. Normally, orange juice would not have calcium nor vitamin D in it. It'd be good in vitamin C, but it's not good in vitamin D. And so that was in an attempt to get people to consume more of the benefits that they would get from milk. But if people don't like drinking milk, either for preference or because they're lactose intolerant, orange juice is a pretty good substitute because a lot of people choose to drink that for breakfast and other types of meals in those scenarios. And so they're still getting uh, the benefits of what was recommended, which was the milk, without having to actually consume it. That was a really like roundabout way of saying it, but hopefully that example helped.
Yeah, it did. That makes perfect sense. I understood that completely.
Cool. Yeah. And if any of you don't like weren't following along with that and want me to just give you like a TLDR like short version, I can do that too. I try to do that when I can. Um, let's see. Aaron asked, can I elaborate on what poor, good, excellent are as per the percent daily values? Yeah. So first, no, percent daily values is what you would see on a food label, and it's based on a 2,000 calorie amount. So basically, it would be more generalized how much of this food per serving is giving you of your fat, of your carbohydrate, of your fiber. Now, when we go into how those things are marketed, they'll usually use terms like poor, good, excellent. Poor is going to be under 5%. Good is going to be 10 to 19%. And then excellent or rich source would be 20% and above. Now, a lot of that's used for marketing, right? So someone's not going to go in and say, this is a poor source of sodium, right? Because most people are not trying to go in there and obtain more sodium per se. But you'll usually see that with like, this is an excellent source of fiber, right? Or this is a good source of vitamin D, for instance.
I'm sorry, can you say the percentages for poor, good, and excellent again, please?
Yeah, of course. Poor is less than 5%. Good is 10 to 19. And then excellent is 20% and above. So there's that little dead space, 6 to 9%. It's kind of like food limbo, I guess, that doesn't actually have a definition. But I wouldn't do anything with that information. I'm not going to try to trick you with it.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Jaylene is, I think, clarifying fortification, adding macronutrients to a food that wouldn't normally be there. Enrichment, adding nutrients that were lost during processing. Yes, that is correct. Shazia asks, can I talk about beta oxidation? So beta oxidation is the actual breakdown of fatty acids, of the usable form of fats that we consume. So when we do consume fats or when we store fats in our body, they are not as just free fatty acids, so just fatty acids without anything else around them. What we typically do is we will take fatty acids and then we'll take three of them and essentially anchor them to a backbone, and that backbone is called a glycerol. But if we have those three fatty acids on a glycerol backbone, we now call it something that you might have heard of before, which is a triglyceride. So whenever you get a blood test and they're measuring things like your HDL and LDL, which are a big concern for people that have, like a risk for heart disease, they'll also look at triglycerides. And so lipolysis is the actual severing of those three fatty acids from the glycerol backbone. And then when we take those individual fatty acids and break them down, that's beta oxidation. You won't need to know this specifically. Like if you know what I just said, you'll be fine on the exam. But if you want to know the specifics, when you take a fatty acid, you break it down at every second carbon because beta is 2 versus alpha, which is 1. Beta oxidation is chopping up a fatty acid at every second carbon. Damien asks, satiety is referring to leptin and insulin and the state of feeling full. Yes, satiety is referring to the state of fullness. And then what you're mentioning, leptin, insulin, those things facilitate that feeling of fullness. So leptin makes you feel full. Ghrelin makes you feel hungry. Insulin, I'm not going to ask you about in terms of feeling full. I mentioned that in class because I think it helps paint the picture a little bit. But we're going to talk a lot more about insulin from like a mechanistic diabetes perspective in the next chapter. We got 10 more minutes. While I want to make sure that I also cover some of the big questions, so like your short answers. So for instance, you're going to have a few short answers. I would be familiar with the video analysis one, specifically the question related to the Industrial Revolution. And if you look into your assignments, you'll see that if you were missing something in that question, that I would have left a comment. And the main things that I'm looking for is you can mention everything. Everything can be correct, but there's three things in particular that I'm going to anchor. It's worth 5 points, but I'm going to anchor three of the main points to it. So if you say stuff that makes sense, I'll give you 2 points automatically. But what I'm looking for specifically are transportation improvements and shelf life improvements led to increased habits of eating. And so that ultimately led to the increase in obesity rates. So if you're really going to remember something that's going to help you get the majority of that question, shelf life to make foods last longer, transportation that helps people get to the foods and move the foods around that now last longer, that made availability higher of food. People eat more, they get more overweight. The other question is on resveratrol and the podcast analysis. So I'm going to ask you whether or not, basically the same thing as your podcast analysis question, whether or not red wine is actually better for you. And a lot of you think that it is better for you because it has the resveratrol in it. But when there's no practical difference between them, is it really better? I would say no. So it's not going to, red wine is not going to be practically better for you because even though there is this little extra antioxidant compound in it, doesn't make a difference because if you were to consume enough red wine to get an effective dose, quote unquote effective dose of that resveratrol, you would end up drinking so much alcohol that you would increase your risk for things like cardiovascular disease. And that's described in the J-shaped curve, right? Low to moderate amounts are indicative of health benefits potentially, and high intakes are related to increases in risk. I think I already talked about the other short answer one. So one of them is the preferences, like why we make our food decisions. There's also the one about oh gosh, what is it? The APA citation. You do have the one picture labeling one, if you remember the RDA, UL, EAR question. So being able to kind of recognize that figure and fill those blanks in. Yeah, the graph. So the one that has the normal distribution on it, and you have to identify which one is which one's the EAR, which one's the RDA. RDA and AI are the same thing. It's just about evidence there. So kind of keep that in mind. That's in the slides as well. And then the UL is kind of that point where things kind of bad stuff starts happening when you consume too much.
Are we gonna have to know the percentages for those values as well?
No. I mean, it'll be listed on there. You just need to be able, like, honestly, you could just memorize the figure and you would be fine. That's not my intention, but you could memorize the figure and be fine.
And then, sorry, you said that that was matching, like matching the thing
That
to
one's not matching. It's more like labeling. So it's not, the answer is not in front of you. That would be matching. So it's more like I took that figure and I just blacked spaces out. And then I ask you, I relabel it A and B and C. And you're just going to have to tell me what A, B, and C are actually referring to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And the other thing, thank you. Hello. Yeah, very hot. The other thing is the fill in the blanks. So you just need to be aware of a lot of those questions that we talked about for the quiz. In a little bit. Okay. Hey. Oh, you will. Okay. When we ask mommy later, I need you to go back over there. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So what was I talking about?
Quiz questions.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Quiz questions. The different types of transport. So I think I told you that literally, well, all I did for your quiz was reword the question about passive transport, facilitated diffusion, active transport. So being able to identify based on a description which one's passive, which one's facilitated, which one's active is going to be beneficial. And I wouldn't just memorize because it's not going to be the same exact question, or maybe it could be. It could be the same exact question, but I don't know if I'm telling you not to memorize it that particular way, you could either think that I'm trying to trick you or I'm trying to help you out a little bit, which I don't know. I guess that's up for you to decide what I'm trying to do. Trying to see what the other one's about. Oh, in relationship to the rapid question, you need to know the steps of well, I need you to know the difference between a hypothesis and a theory and the basic tenets of like the scientific method, observation, hypothesis, experiment. Yes? Yes?
Wait, so hypothesis, theory, and then different types of experiments, is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean that is I didn't say that, but that is something you're gonna need to know, right? So like a epidemiological study, which is big, broad population studies that mostly are just looking for like correlations in the population, right? Like murders and ice cream sales, I think was the example I used, right? Did I mention that in class?
Yeah, you did. So it's kind of like so that you mentioned in class and how on the homework that was due last night, the question that you're like reading this article, what type of thing was it?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. So that's actually about like a paper type. So I'm not going
Okay.
to ask you about that. Like, I'm not gonna have you look at like, there's no way that I could feasibly give you like a whole paper and force you to scan through and be like, yeah, that's a review article, or yeah, that's like this type of thing. More so just like the general, because the most of the nutrition information that we have is either big, broad scale epidemiological type research where we have thousands, hundreds of thousands of participants, but we were limited on the actual like claims that we can make because the data is so um murky, right? So we can look at things and see, yeah, like murder rates are increasing as ice cream sales are increasing, but it doesn't tell us how they're connected. A randomized control trial is much more controlled, like literally that is in the name, right? So it's in a lab. You have people taking set amounts of these things. You're much more able to confidently say, yes, when we give people ice cream, they want to go outside, right? Like we can track this. When we, uh, it probably can't track the murders in a controlled environment like that, but it's much more able to kind of give us an idea of how the relationship is actually being formed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Damien says, bring a calculator. That is correct. You should need to bring a calculator. I'm not going to make the math really difficult. I'm just going to have you, I don't even need you to show your work, honestly. If you guess the right answer, if you don't, that's totally fine. I wouldn't like put so much stock into that math that you like stress yourself out about being able to do it. Like, obviously, I want you to get the most amount of points possible, but it might be like 6 points at the most. Any last minute dying question, Sophia?
Yeah, I know that we have to bring a Scantron. Where do we get that?
You can get it from the bookstore. So in the OSU, I don't know if the little like shop thing that has like food and stuff, it's on like right as you enter into the main like foyer kind of area. Um, ooh, online PDF for free. Oh, would you like print it out or something? Or Scantros costs 46 cents at the bookstore. I don't know if our machine will read things that are printed out. You can try. I would probably just like go to the bookstore real quick, and yeah, I think you can get like a pack of them for like a couple bucks or something. And then if you really like feel like it, you could bring your whole pack, and you could be like a Scantron scalper, and you could just like sell your Scantrons to people. That would be pretty cool. Because inevitably someone will forget either a Scantron or a calculator. I have a calculator, an extra one, but if you forget to give it back to me, I automatically fail you. Not in the class, just the exam. Um, there's something else I was going to mention. Make sure you bring a pencil too. So a pencil that works for a Scantron. If you use like a colored pencil, it won't read it. Oh, other thing to note too is that you're going to get a paper copy of the exam. If you circle the answers on the exam and you list a different answer on the Scantron, I go by with what the Scantron says because it's kind of a cheeky thing to circle one answer and then list a different one on your Scantron. It kind of seems like you're just trying to like eliminate things by giving me multiple answers. Not a big fan of that. I'll ask one more question if anyone wants to ask it.
Yeah, I'll ask one.
Sure.
For the GERD, which is the
Oh, yeah.
gastroesophageal reflux disease, and IBS, what
Mhm.
exactly like the question's asking?
Yeah, I'm just going to make sure that you know the definition of the word. So I'm going to ask you, like, what does GERD stand for? And then what is the structure that's actually affected? And you're going to want to know that that is so what it actually is that there's a loosening of the sphincter, the lower esophageal sphincter or esophageal sphincter. That means that acid can now splash up from the stomach into the esophagus, and that's what you're feeling. So as long as you know what I just mentioned, like the root cause of it, and then that it stands for gastroesophageal reflux disease, you'll be fine.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. All right, we're good there. If you have more questions, like if you want examples of the math problems and stuff like that, feel free to email me and I'll give you an example. I won't give you the answer per se. I'm going to let you walk through it a little bit to make sure that you know how to do it on your own. But if you get stuck, obviously I'll help. And then we have Sunday for our other review session, same time, same link, but I'm not going to record it. I'm as soon as this meeting is done, I'll convert it over and it should be up in the next couple hours. Yay. Everyone have a great Friday.
Thank you.
too. I like your hat, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I got it when I actually was at Lucasfilm, so
Cool.
yeah, I was the only person who knew how to read the Star Wars text that's ever been there.
Wow.
Yeah,
Did they give you the hat for free then?
no, they didn't give me anything for free. We even had to pay for parking.
Oh,
Yeah, it's okay though. Not many people can say they've been to Lucasfilm.
I didn't even know you could go to Lucasfilm. Like I didn't know that was even a thing.
You have
So
to know someone to get in.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't me either. It was Dr. Leininger's husband, Jordan. He knew someone. So I went and they even did like a lottery for it. So
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
yeah, it was super. So I've been there twice and it was very exciting. Yeah. Oh, and Samantha asked if you came, if she came on Sunday, can you record it? Um, I don't know if you can record it through Zoom. If you can, that's totally fine. I just don't want to record it and have to upload it. So whatever you can do to record it, I'm totally fine with that. Cool. We good. All right, I'm gonna go have another meeting. So
I have a super quick, this is more
sure.
personal, but I cannot go to the Sunday one at 10 a.m. because of
Uh-huh.
church. So is there like any way that I can get like bullet notes of what's discussed in that review?
I
Yeah,
can send them to you.
there you go.
Oh, that would be
You're
amazing,
volunteering.
please.
Yeah, of course. Like if you, I'll look for your email and I'll just email you and I'll take a picture of my notes and everything because I took notes today for some of my other friends in this class. So I can send them to you too for Sunday.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Nice.
Of
Look at that
course.
teamwork. All right. I'll see y'all later. Have a good Friday.
Thank you,
Bye.
Steven.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you.